greatest hits, that Steps with Tragedy, taking us to about 8:07 on 1FM, The Brightside. Good morning to you. Welcome to the show. We are live on Facebook chatting with our friend Dr. Natasha Riard. She's in for a very special series on autism and intellectual disabilities. And today the focus is on educational paths for children with this condition. So welcome back, Dr. Natasha.
So it's really, this is probably the topic that it's closest to my heart because that's currently where my son is in terms of education, Dr. Natasha. And I know this is where the parents, I think we kind of touched on this yesterday, when they think many steps ahead.
Yes.
And education is probably near the forefront of it all.
Yeah.
So it can be a real minefield, can't it? What do I do with my special needs kid, or how do I place him or her in school? How does one temper parents' expectations on this?
Actually, I think it's just through education and knowledge.
Okay.
So, firstly, I think the MOE, special education or SPED website is very comprehensive. It really breaks down the different options for parents.
Sure.
So, parents do have to take that first step, like, it can be scary, but just go on the website, get familiar with some of those names, and they give you some pointers as well, like maybe different kind of categories. So usually when I talk to parents, I will say focus on the highest degree of independence that's within your child's capabilities. Because remember, they think about mainstream because they're always thinking, I hope you can, do all those things, get your certifications, take care of yourself, get a job, when I'm away. So at some point, the conversation has to be, when you look at your child, what is the highest degree of independence they could possibly achieve, and start like working towards that, and go for the open houses. So most of the special education schools will have open houses. When you go to the MOE SPED website, there will be links. So it's very comprehensive. They'll tell you like what the programs that they have, what curriculum, what things they focus on, and there will be a tab there that's like open house. So go down and visit, because it's usually two things. Like once we start assessment procedures, right? And then they go, which one should I go? Actually, when they look at it, they will look which one's the nearest to their house. So that's like the first thing. Convenience. But then they will also want to go down to the school, because then they'll come back and they'll say, oh, we visited a few and this one's not near our house, but we really like the vibe. When we talk to the teachers, when we see the classrooms, when we see the other students there, I think this is a good fit. So do all those things if possible, I would say.
Yeah, that's kind of like what you did, right, Shehzad?
Yeah, we went through a lot, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, about how we sort of came to the conclusions that we did. But I think just to continue what Dr. Natasha was saying, you don't know until you visit, and you're right. The immediate thing is what's closest to my house, and that makes sense, because parents with neurotypical kids will do that, right? Of course, you go for. But with special needs, it's such a different kettle of fish, and you really need to find a fit for your child. That's what I would say, just my 2 cents on this, that you don't know until you go visit. We went to so many, and we realized that's not quite what we want, or this is perfect for us. And then you narrow down. But it really is about going to see what suits you and your child. I agree.
I actually know someone, their son actually is on the spectrum, and they've actually moved house so that they could be near where they wanted the son to attend, because it was the right fit.
Right.
And I think, it makes sense, right?
That would be a mainstream primary school, I guess.
No. It's actually a special school meant for autistic kids.
Okay.
I think it's operated out of like an apartment or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because of that, they were
in terms of the convenience of getting there, not because you get priority.
No.
Because
just
already
easy to commute.
Mainstream kids, their parents are already doing that. Moving closer so that they can go to the alma mater or something like that. I have friends who have moved houses,
just
across the island just to put their kid in. So why not?
Yes. And speaking of this education and starting from the beginning. And we assume that the parents or the caregivers are actually already sending their autistic or ID child for early intervention. Should they also be sending them to neurotypical preschool, Dr. Natasha?
Yeah, I think, so 2 things here. For the mainstream preschools, I say yes, give it a try and see what the feedback is. Again, it's always that fit. So just in some sense, I want to say like no harm trying. Sometimes there can be a bit of harm, but just give it a try, because for some it is very helpful, especially if they have lower needs. Teachers are very understanding and they know how to accommodate. So teachers who either they've been trained or just intrinsically like nurturing, you know, that they know how to like give different kinds of worksheets, or they give different kinds of instructions, or they're just curious about the child and they want to know like, hey, something's up and can I see what's behind it?
Sure.
But for some it's not helpful. It's stressful for both the school, the teachers and the staff, and the kid.
Yeah.
So nobody's benefiting. Everybody's just having a bad day every day. And parents will know about it because the teachers will give feedback. So then I think in those cases where the child is not ready, in the sense of like they are walking around, they don't understand the classroom routine yet, the language is not there, then parents may have to consider something else, like either finding one that has a smaller group support, or maybe a special needs preschool. Yeah.
And is it the parent that notices this, or is it the teachers that give feedback to the parent?
I think usually it's the teachers, giving feedback.
Okay. All right. We're going to continue this discussion on Facebook Live. Do join us there, facebook.com/1FM913. We are chatting with Dr. Natasha Riard, who is a specialist in early childhood development. So do join us. Also send us your questions via WhatsApp or on Facebook as well. More with Dr. Natasha in just a bit.
1FM.
Us today, and we're talking about educational pathways or options for children on the spectrum or with intellectual disabilities. How can, as they progress through preschool, right, inevitably the attention will turn to primary school, right, Dr. Natasha, and the age-old question, do I put my child then through mainstream primary school?
Yeah. This is a difficult conversation to have, and there's two things to focus on. So one is that they can learn a mainstream curriculum. So it means looking at your child, do they have that cognitive ability to kind of understand what's happening and cognitively learn those subjects? So that's one, right? But the second one is the mainstream setting. So it's two things. Learning a mainstream curriculum in a mainstream setting.
Yeah.
So in a mainstream setting, the jump from K2 to P1 is actually very high, because the hours are longer. You have to get your own food. Like in K2, you know, you queue up, then the teacher gives you the food, or you bring your own snacks. You got to get your own food. You have to handle money. When you were in K2, you are like usually the only K2 class. And then you go to primary school and then there's like 9 other classes.
Yeah.
So there's already so many kids. It's very crowded. 30 students probably in one class or more. You have to stay seated, pay attention, do all of those things. So it's a huge transition for neurotypicals.
Okay.
Already like
Let
baseline.
alone,
Baseline.
Yeah.
So when you have an autistic child, there's other things that come in, like very, very heightened anxiety, right? Transitions, change. They may have difficulties expressing their thoughts or emotions, or actually they don't have, but we don't understand them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so funny because we are the neurotypicals, right? And then we're like expecting this kid to accommodate to us. You know, so it's not so much that they cannot express, but we don't understand how they express
Right.
it. Yeah, and they might misread cues, or they don't understand sarcasm, or it could be very literal or social context.
Yeah.
So planning and organizing, so executive functioning also are things that children on the spectrum might have difficulties with. There's a certain level of independence that is needed.
Correct.
They need a lot of support.
Can I just add, even something as basic as the school bell ringing is, for our son, that was going to be a problem. He can't handle the loud sudden noise, and it's fairly prolonged. So we had to, just in case he went into mainstream, we had him. We had to play bells. We had to play bells for him just to get used to that, and he really didn't quite like it, actually, to be fair. So it can be even the really, actually, quite often it's the small details, right, Dr. Natasha?
Yes, even like asking to go toilet.
Yes.
It's a very big thing, because the thing about autistic children is that within that social thing, right, is the hidden curriculum that they don't know. So you actually do not know what's going on in their minds until later, I think, when I meet like adults, and then they can really talk to you about their experience, and they have all those things where it's like, wait, when do I ask to go to the toilet? Is it now? Is it later? Like, will the teacher say no? Is it wrong? Like, oh wait, that person just went to the toilet. Does that mean I cannot? They have all these questions running through their mind.
I struggled with that in primary school. Like, I was afraid to go to the toilet. No one told me it was okay or not okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'm
so
worried.
there's all these like social rules that's not immediately obvious to them. And I think when you're bringing up the school bell, another thing that has been in the research world for some time is that they have difficulties with the unpredictable nature. So actually, if you can have that conversation to say the bell will ring
Yes.
at predictable times,
Yes.
they get better.
Correct.
So they can anticipate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because at my son's school, he has a classmate who is on the spectrum, and I got to meet him because I was volunteering at the reading program. And at first, it was like you see this kid who's like throwing really massive tantrums and all that, and I looked at him. But when I started to have a talk with him, I was like, "Hey, Adrian, is everything okay?" He's brilliant. He was giving the scientific names of plants and all that, right? But you can see the way that he interacts is very different. I was like, "Oh," and then another day he had a weighted vest on. I think it was to help him sort of like calm him down. But this is my question. So you have, the main schools, it seems like they want to try and inculcate, and like be more supportive, like you said, but is it really enough,
I think it's hard to comment on that. I will say, really, like, get educated. It's strange to me. Like, I talk to friends and then, they say, it's 2023 and people still don't understand autism. Like, what world do we live in?
Perhaps we could continue that discussion on air. I think our listeners would love to hear about that as well. Just one sec. 1FM 91.3 hits. That's Madonna and Into the Groove. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It is the Brightside. We are chatting with childhood developmental specialist Dr. Natasha Riard in for a very special series on autism and intellectual disabilities.
So we've talked about now that big decision of going into mainstream schools for parents or caregivers of special needs children, autistic kids. Let's just talk about the key differences between mainstream and special education schools.
Okay. I think here is where we can have that conversation that actually there's different types of special education school. So it's like mainstream and then SPED. But SPED, there's like so many.
A spectrum of it, if you will.
Yes,
Right.
Exactly. So you have the ones that actually do a mainstream curriculum. They do not do mother tongue.
Right.
So they're aiming for PSLE. So they do a mainstream curriculum, just not in a mainstream setting. So that's one type of special education school. Then you have ones that cater to mild intellectual disability. So you can have autism and also a mild intellectual disability. So the focus there is on very functional academics, like, basic literacy and numeracy. One way to kind of understand that is to look at their trajectory, what they're kind of aiming for. And this would be things like maybe housekeeping in hotel and accommodation services, like food preparation in F&B industry, merchandising in retail operations, or even landscape operations in horticulture. So that is like when they're thinking about like work. Very practical. Things that very hands-on, they can do it, they can follow that set of instructions. Then you get to much higher needs, and this might be autism-specific schools. So you have like Eden or St. Andrew's Autism Center, where it's specific to children that have autism. And then you have ones that cater to autism and also other multiple disabilities. So like you have your Rainbow Center and AWA and Minds. So the curriculum is really differentiated and it's catered. So it gets more and more highly supervised and smaller like student-teacher ratio as they get higher needs. So that's I guess one way to look at it. Yeah.
Very, very interesting indeed. I just wanted to ask because, my son at his school, it's a mainstream school, and one of his classmates is actually on the spectrum. And to me, when I got to meet the boy, he's amazing. Like he can rattle off the scientific names, the long scientific names of like plants and everything. But I thought it was amazing that, he was part of the classroom. I mean, it's good exposure for the other kids, right? And also the staff, even for the parents. But would you recommend that parents with autistic kids try the mainstream, see how they might or might not fit in, or I don't know? Is there enough support?
I think this is
in the
just general information, because obviously when I'm seeing a parent one-to-one and I have all that information, I can be quite specific. So here I think I'll just be more general, where again is those two things. Can they learn mainstream curriculum in a mainstream setting? I think as much as possible, if they can, then they should be there.
Okay.
And we should have more people who think like you, Lavinia, because you are like, this is great. He has all these skills and he has so much to offer. And I want people to see autistic children that way. So it's not about like we have to pity them or that they're, like different in that way. Actually, we all are different. I think I was having a conversation with my husband where, something, nobody ever went to Lionel Messi and say, hey, I think you're a bit too obsessed with football. Like, you got to stop this high specific interest.
Right.
Like, try other sports, like venture, do like nobody would have ever told him that.
Correct. So why are we applying to others?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody has their strengths. If plants are his thing, I can imagine him giving presentations. If it's a science related thing or you're going someplace, I want to talk to that guy.
Yes.
Because he has all the information.
Yes.
So I think we all have our strengths, neurotypicals or neurodivergent.
It's like my son is completely obsessed with MRTs and public transport. I can actually plot routes. I'm like, if I want to go to Yio Chu Kang to Farrer Road, what do I do? Bam. He gives me the route, tells me what line, change here, change there. He's memorized it. Now I just need him to memorize cards, and then we're going to go to MBS together.
Yeah. So
I'm just kidding. If anyone out there is taking this seriously, just kidding.
Okay. You brought up Rain Man, so you went there.
I know.
You went there.
Because that's what a lot of people say about autism. As I said, I'm going back to that old trope.
Yeah, but find out what their strengths are, and you can. So I have this story where that there's this boy with autism, and he's obsessed with like planes, right?
Yes.
But what he likes about it are like the crashes. So he's like, I know about all these things, and you see, for neurotypicals, we're like, no, that's bad. Don't do that. But why?
Why? Yeah.
But why? It's just knowledge.
Yeah.
We can watch airplane crash investigation. That's okay.
I mean, there are movies about it.
Exactly.
Final Destination.
So we as neurotypicals, we need to change our mindset.
It's us, not them.
It's us.
Yeah.
It's us. We are the problem.
Yeah.
So, but then some of the things might be like maybe not helpful. Like maybe he keeps telling his sister as they're boarding the plane, they are like, these are all the crashes that happen. So you have to pivot. You have to say, hey, this is very good knowledge. But when you say that, other children, they may start to get scared. Do you have any info about like positive plane things? Can you give us those things? And then it changes and they go, yes, okay. And then they go and do their own research, right? However that they go and watch these shows. It can change. So you just need to give them a creative idea based on their strengths and interests. And you help them pivot. And then they're like, hey, actually planes are very safe. They're safer than driving.
Yes.
So they can still be part of the conversation, but in a meaningful, helpful way.
I love that. It's about creating options for them to explore as well. Like the phalange on a plane. What is it?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah,
now you got me.
It's they brought it out as a joke on Friends, but it's actually a thing on the plane. Apparently, we are chatting with Dr. Natasha Riard here for our very special series on autism this week. Join the conversation on Facebook. We are live there, facebook.com/1FM913. Back with more in a bit. Morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on Facebook. So Dr. Natasha, I love that you are teaching us how to communicate, with children on the spectrum, because I love what you said earlier on about how it's not that they can't communicate. They are expressing themselves. It's just that we don't know. We haven't picked up on their cues, and we should then educate ourselves as well. It's a very much a two-way communication that way, right? Now, everyone has heard of Pathlight as sort of the SPED school to aim for, but places are limited. So are there other options out there for parents and kids?
Yes. I think that's been a big thing for a while. So there are two schools that cater to children with, having the mainstream curriculum aiming for PSLE, and that is St. Andrew's Mission School. So they're currently located in Bukit Batok. So those to me are, in terms of like Singaporeans and, like local schools, those would be the two options.
We want to share some comments from our Brightsiders on Facebook. We have Willie saying, I feel that more importantly is to focus on the present obstacles. Is the environment conducive for the child? Even for a mainstream school selection, parents will go crazy on things like, ranking of the schools and the pressure, instead of, focusing on the pressure the child might face, or, the child to study like crazy, spending, tons of tuition without even bothering how the child feels. We're already doing that to, the typical
Neurotypical,
kids.
yeah.
I can't imagine how is it like for those, on
Yeah.
the spectrum. And we've got a great comment from Andrew. He says, "G'day, Shaz. My niece has autism. They moved back to Australia. She went into a mainstream school, but the government gave a lot of support with
Right.
funds and even extra class support."
Brilliant.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely brilliant.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I feel, Dr. Natasha, that we're kind of going in that way. There's allied teachers. It's difficult here when you've got bigger classes of about 35, and there's maybe a sprinkling of neurodiverse kids in there. But I think I feel that we're heading in the right direction. It's just going to take a bit of time before we can sort of get to I think in different countries they've approached it from at some time back, how they've treated neurodiverse kids, and we are slowly but surely getting there.
Yes, we are slowly but surely getting there. I think it's one of those things where, like, maybe something to think about when I do work with teachers or helping parents, advocate for support for their kids in school, is sometimes we view it differently, but actually there's lots of just classroom strategies that cater to the entire class. They don't have to do necessarily something very different just for 1, 2, 3 maybe children with special access needs. So there's all these great classroom management strategies that, like, you don't have to cater to just one kid. If you give a very good group instruction, if certain things are, it's that. It doesn't have to be extra special sometimes.
Actually, sorry, in the process of looking for a mainstream school, can parents actually, like at primary school level, go in and have a look at the school and the support that they have in place for neurodiverse kids?
I think it's that same thing I would say about the open house thing.
Right.
So sometimes for those parents, what they'll do is that they'll go before, like when they're registering and they know maybe certain schools that is within their neighborhood, right? They'll go and visit those schools. They will go to the website. Those schools, I think, may also have open houses, or they'll go and find on the school website the special needs like officer, or there'll be some info and an email there. They may pre-email those teachers just to see, like, hey, what's happening in your school? What kinds of programs do you have?
Right.
So again, it's about that education and reaching out.
Is there any bridge between kindergarten and the primary school? Do like the kindergarten teachers kind of help with that process?
They will have something in the sense of, I think towards the later parts of K2, they probably will start talking to the kids about that. Yeah. But it's going to be more than that for, I think, autistic children.
I think in our case, we wanted, if we didn't get the school that we wanted for our son, we had already pinned down that he'd go to his brother's school. So there's some support. And it also happens my eldest son goes to the same school as Lavi's kids, and we made it clear to the school that our second son, has special needs, and we wanted to know what how they could cater for it, right?
Yeah, sure.
And thankfully, we got the school we wanted anyway, so we didn't end up doing it. But we made it very clear. I think we wanted to communicate that to the school rather than just thrust him in and fingers crossed.
I am happy to report what I have seen with my son's classmate. Okay. They have a minder during like recess break who is with the child, and the boy loves to read. And that's how I met him, because I was doing the reading program, and he came in. He's hilarious. And one day he was like, "Oh, it's so boring," and I was like, "Oh, why?" And he was like, "I've read all these books," Yeah, it's really cool. And there was the teacher who was with him all the while. And just like, "Okay, Adrian, hey, it's 5 minutes, the bell will ring, let's get ready to go back," and stuff like that. So I was very impressed. I was very impressed what the school was doing. And also, this boy is just lovely. Yeah. I tried to give him a book about aquarium fishes, because it's got a lot of scientific name. Then he rejected it. He says, "No, I only
Not
like
his
plants."
thing. Something fishy
So I
about this
went,
book.
"Okay, thanks."
I like what you brought up, because in that story, what I'm catching on to it is that, you see, Lavinia, I feel like you've got that energy in you that's like, if a kid says, this is so boring, and you're like, why? You're curious.
Not to shut that down, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, that's what I mean about that communication aspect. He's just telling you how he feels. Why are we offended that he's saying something?
Yeah.
Some things are just boring. Or like in kids, when a teacher like pairs them up, right? And then maybe a child with autism will go, "No!" and just like start screaming. And usually you'll be just like, hey, stop that, that's rude, like cater to your friend, like your friend doesn't like it, you hurt his friend's feelings.
Wow,
But but what about his feelings? There's a reason why he's saying no. Can we be curious, like, hey, how come? Can we have a separate conversation?
Yeah.
And then you start to realize that kid has been bullying him or other
Correct.
things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by when they express themselves, we are the ones not listening. We have to listen.
I think that's why I can't be a teacher. I'll be like, I understand.
Doing that 35.
That's why you should be a teacher.
No. It's like, I don't want to be the guy. I know what you mean.
I'm sorry, I'm boring.
Take one
I
for
will
the
try
team.
to be more entertaining. Yeah.
Just in my case, I just want to explain where we came from. I think we made a very clear decision early on with our son that academics were the last thing on our mind, right? We just wanted him to be happy and to be able to do the basic things in life. I think as Dr. Natasha has mentioned. So I was never interested in him achieving the big grades or getting into the best schools. We saw in the preschool, it was an inclusive preschool. So he mixed with neurotypical and neurodiverse kids, and he really thrived in that environment. So we wanted to kind of replicate that at primary level.
Okay.
So we looked around and we couldn't find what we needed. And so therefore we decided that we would get an exemption from primary school for our son.
Okay.
And so now he is in the international system because even the psychologist, the psychologist agreed that since he had improved so much from the time that he was first diagnosed in that sort of inclusive integrated system, that we felt that we wanted to continue that. And so that's why we decided not to send him to our elder son's school.
Okay.
And that's why it's what suits us. I think, it's horses for courses, whatever suits you and the needs of your child.
We're going to continue this discussion live on air. Do join us there as well. We're chatting with Dr. Natasha Riard, who's also the clinic manager over at James Cook University. Send us your questions. This is a great time to pick her brain. 1FM 91.3, Good Times, Greatest Hits. Brightside, that was Israel Kamakawi. Some rainbow, light, and life in our lives, and that has come today in the form of Dr. Natasha Riard.
Hey.
She is a clinical psychologist who specializes in early childhood development, also the clinic manager over at James Cook University, and we are having a very informative chat on the, autism and children with intellectual disabilities and how we can help improve their lives, moving forward in terms of looking for educational pathways as well.
Just want to ask, in terms of the special education schools, what are the kind of assessments that parents or caregivers can expect?
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you asked this question because I really want to, and first I'll have a blanket apology to all psychologists out there and allied health professionals because I want to tell parents, be empowered. Because it's very intimidating to bring your child to be assessed. It's like somebody is really assessing your child. Because we do an IQ assessment, then we interview the parents about adaptive functioning, which is their everyday skills, right? In communication, in socializing, in just like daily self-help skills. It's very intimidating. So parents, go in empowered. You are actually in charge. So I think sometimes parents think like, oh, I don't want my kid to be assessed because then the truth will be out and then we cannot do this, we cannot do that. No, we are just professionals assessing as standardized and objective as we can. We give you the recommendations, our professional clinical opinion, you decide. So even if I've assessed the child and I say very high needs, I think they need to go to this particular special education schools, the parent can still say, I'm still going to try mainstream. So go in empowered, ask us the hard questions, whatever you don't understand, like get your money's worth, Be like, excuse me, can you explain this again? Or I don't understand. When you say he got higher needs, what?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
How come he cannot go mainstream? Can you explain? So that's why I have that blanket apology, but
Sure.
that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
Remember when I say that everyone is responsible, when that's our responsibility. So it's for us as the psychologists to do that. Yeah, so do come in empowered. do check first that the psychologist that you're seeing is on the list of registered psychologists. So on the Singapore Psychological Society, there's a list.
Right.
Check.
This is to ensure that the recommendation is then valid. I mean,
Exactly.
accepted, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So just make sure you're going to a person who is a psychologist and their name is on the register.
Otherwise, what a waste of time. It becomes a whole process all over again.
A whole process over again. And I think it's very intimidating when you say that, oh, we're going to do an IQ test because, and the thing is that's like, how do I pass? Do I pass the IQ test? So there's no passing. It's not academic.
True.
It's actually just looking at cognitive. And the first question we're trying to answer is, does the child today show that they have an intellectual disability? Because that is like the two pathways. Because once they have an intellectual disability, you're really considering special education. And so it's not so much that you must have high IQ to go into mainstream. No, it's not that at all. We are just assessing, is it within that range that allows you to learn that mainstream curriculum? And if it's not within that range, it just means that you need higher support, less children in a classroom, a different kind of curriculum. Yeah.
I want to share this really great comment from Zukanani9 on our Facebook, and he says that most MOE schools are actually equipped with a special education needs officer. I didn't know that. Oh, okay. And sometimes he says, it's the parents who are kind of sparing the diagnosis information of their child for fear of their child being singled out. But this in turn limits the support the school can provide for the child because they don't have the full picture. I think that's a very good point.
He's saying some parents are not
Hold
informing
back.
the school.
Yeah. Oh,
I can understand that.
Yeah.
I can really understand that. So I tell parents, talk to your K2 teacher. So when we do the assessments, the K2 teachers information is very vital. So if how your child is in K2 is actually a very good predictor. It's not like you can predict 100%, but I would say it's one of the best predictors.
Right.
So if your K2 teacher is actually saying, oh, your child's on the spectrum, or we didn't know until you told us, and they could follow the classroom routine, language-wise, they understand everything. Actually, for some parents, they may hold back on telling the school because so far there's nothing to kind of tell anybody.
Sure.
So that's one option. But if your K2 teacher is already knows just from her own experience,
he or she will know very clearly.
There's no point holding it back from your primary school. No point, because that teacher will also be able to see. So you're hiding nothing.
Sure.
But I can really understand parents' hesitance. I really do, because it's a lack of trust. Yes, they may have help. There may be the special educations officer, teachers, etc. They have those things, but you just don't know till you know. You know what I mean? How they're going to manage your child, and then how your child is going to be. Yeah.
That primary school environment can be very challenging, though, because kids, when they don't understand
Yes.
something, the mainstream kids, they can be mean sometimes.
And
they say things that hurt.
Correct. And I just want to pick up on that, because I think there's a fear from parents as well in mainstream that my special needs kid might be 1 out of 35 or even 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
could they be ostracized? Could they get bullied? And I'm sure that's a very a valid feeling that many parents. I certainly had that fear, to be very honest with you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
That's a real fear. Yeah. I want to point it out that I don't know why we do this as adults, but they are still children.
Yeah.
So yes, you have your neurotypicals, and they may not understand, or they may kind of ostracize and all that, right? That comes actually from us.
Yeah.
From us. Our diagnosis is deficits based. Our society is still not as inclusive as we want it to be. There's differentiation. You were looking for that inclusivity,
Yes.
right? So we are not there yet.
Correct.
And then we place lots of stress on the children to be like, hey, you're a bad person, you bully. But I think what I want to say is actually think small. Don't think big, think small about what is the thing you can do. Like my children, they come home and then they may start they are modeling what they hear at school.
school. Yeah.
They'll say, okay, so fake name, Jane. Oh, Jane, your teacher was saying Jane's very slow. Then we have to wait for her. And then when she goes to the toilet, it's like this 15-minute adventure, right? And, I didn't catch it at first. It's just listening, okay, I'm very busy, that kind of thing. But after a while, when you hear it, right, I go, actually tell me about Jane. You know what?
Yeah. Explore that, right?
What's the problem there? Why do you think Jane is slower than the rest? You know, so that's what I mean about think small.
Yeah.
Not these big changes, but that person in front of you that's like live reporting what's happening. They're echoing. They can see. They're neurotypical. They can see the teacher's frustration. They can see what the problem is, and they're coming to talk to you.
Yeah.
Change that kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, can we talk? Like, oh, how do you think we can help Jane? What do you think like Jane needs? If you were having this problem, right, do you want to be shouted at, or do you want somebody to help you? You pivot the neurotypical.
I just want to add very quickly on this. While I was a bit fearful of how my son could get potentially bullied in mainstream, on the other hand, why I opted not for a special education needs school per se was I also felt for me that it was going to be a bubble. And all he was going to have around him was special needs kids.
Yeah.
And therefore, everyone's kind of wrapped in cotton wool a little bit within that environment, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's how it generally would be, because everyone is understanding of your needs. Why I wanted it in kind of both, because that's, for me, what real life is going to be like.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have a taste of both worlds. That's where I came from. But again, this is not for everyone.
All right. We're going to wrap up this discussion on Facebook Live. Dr. Natasha, thank you so much for your wonderful insights on early childhood development and educational pathways for our kids. If you want to find out more about what she does, where can people reach you?
They can go to my website, drnatashariard.com.
Nice. All right. We're going to be wrapping up on Facebook. Join us there.
The Brightside.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for chiming in. Of course, Zul, you shared a very, very good comment. We also shared it on air. Thank you so much for chiming in on that. And also from Will, he says, Zad, I think Shehzad is his favorite. Yeah. Zad, that's the perfect mindset, because the overall well-being is definitely the utmost important thing for a child. And most degree holders become employee for the non-degree holder employer.
But I think the real world context
Will.
is a very important thing. Like, how do we prepare them for the real world? There's going to be all sorts of people that they meet along the way.
You can't
move forward
insulate
in life.
everything, can you?
Yeah.
That's, you got to be prepared for it, I guess.
Any last thoughts on the topic, Dr. Natasha?
I'm just thinking about the pivot. I think I one day hope not to be an idealist, but I still am. I don't want to have this conversation about like how do we prepare our kids for the real world. I want to be like, hey, real world, wake up.
Yes.
Wake up your
Correct.
idea, please.
Yes.
You know.
Can we have that line? Wake up your idea.
Wake
That's
up your idea.
The tagline for this.
That should be on your T-shirt or your slogan.
The second T-shirt.
Hey.
Like, wake up your idea, please. Like,
That should be Taylor Swift's new song.
You are onto something.
Such a wonderful chat with you. Thank you so much.
Last thought, by the way, if you want to kind of see an insight into neurodiverse kids in school, and it's more the American context, there's a really great series on Netflix called Atypical. And I'm fascinated by it, because obviously my wife and I can identify a lot of things with our kids, but I don't know whether you've seen it, Dr. Riard.
Yes.
It's very amusing. The kid is obsessed with penguins, and you know what? He's taken it to another level. And I love it, because his parents have embraced it too.
yes. He's the Lionel Messi of penguins.
Thank you.
Hey.
There we go. All right. We hope to see you again real soon back in the 1FM studio with more of your enlightening thoughts. All right. So once again, people can find you on your website. It's drnatashariard.com. That's spelled RIARD. RD. All right. We'll speak to you again soon.
Good times. Greatest hits.